All right, so this is a recording for Unit C. Specifically, if you decide to do your Unit C doing a difference in means, so the way you would start is deciding who are going to be your two groups. So for me, I'm doing people living in the city and people living out in the country, but you'll hear me say that the rural dwellers or rural people. And once you pick your two groups, and you got to decide, well, what about them? So me, I'm doing difference in the average of sleep. And so the big question is there a difference? Is one group maybe getting more sleep than the other? Maybe not. That's all part one is just introducing who your target population is. Part two is then just doing a little bit of, well, how did you collect your data? So most of us is going to be a convenience sampling rather than a random sample. So for that reason, we'll just make a comment that because it's just convenient sampling, meaning you can ask your friends, your family, coworkers, we won't be able to generalize to the larger population. That's okay. It's an observational study where people are just self-reporting the amount of sleep that they're getting each day on average. And then you want to aim for at least 10 people for group one and another 10 for group two. If you're a little bit below or above, that's totally okay. But just keep them separate. So I was able to ask 10 people from the city and 9 people living in the rural setting. And so here's all the rural people. And as you collect this information, some of them may say, oh, I'm getting about 10 hours of sleep. Perfect. Some of them say, oh, I don't know, I'm getting about 9 or 10 hours. So you can just split the difference, 9.5. So the main thing is you get at least close to 10 values for your first group and another 10 values for your second group. Again, it's okay if it's a little bit underneath. And so the reason why I'm doing this recording is because I want to show you where to go once you have your information collected. Come here to the one quantitative and one categorical. And then come here to edit the data because you need to put it into StatKey manually. So edit the data. And when you see this, it's going to be a really long list of just default information. So I'm just scrolling to the bottom because you'll want to clear all this out. It's more than enough of what you need. And so before I do hit clear, just notice that it's got a letter, comma, and a value. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this to rule and start with my very first case. It was the first person of 6. And then notice also the second person also had a 6. And then the next person had 8.75. So at least to show you like what's going to be happening here, rule, first person was 6. The next case was a person from the rule group, also had 6. And so you're just typing this in and hitting enter every time you need to start your next case. Rule, comma, 8.75. And you're going to keep going all the way down until you finish this very last rule 14. And at some point, you're going to need to switch it over to city. And when you get to city, again, imagine that I've already typed in a whole bunch. You'll do city, and then you'll start that first person, that first case in the city group. Now, I've already got a version of this all typed out. Look, it's got rule, city, and then it switches, and you just keep your two groups separate from each other. And so one thing that's nice that if you've already typed this out once, you're able to just copy and paste it in here. So you'll have to type this in at least once for yourself and have all your first group, comma, each of their values, your second group, comma. And then you do want to keep, since there is a header up here, you do want to keep this box checked. I don't think it hurts if there's another extra space there, but that's all in there nice. Then you'll hit OK. And over here to the right, you're going to see the summary of statistics. And this is the main thing that we're after. I mean, the histogram is nice. The box plot is nice. I think probably the best version of this is the box plot. So I would go ahead and save a picture of that. And so I've already done that. I've just done like a little snippet picture of this thing. And I pasted it over here into my project and just make at least one big observation. For me, what I noticed is when you're looking at the averages, which is what I'm focusing on, is the rural has an average amount of sleep of 9.375 and the city people only 9. And so that tells me based on the observed samples the rule are getting slightly more sleep. So I just made a comment down here that the rural individuals, the people out in the country, are maybe getting slightly have a slightly higher average of sleep, 9.375 versus only 9 for the city dwellers. And so that will take care of your part 4. Now notice that part 5 is a confidence interval. And so again, we'll go back to the home page. We're going to go here, difference in means. But having copy and pasted your data, when you come here to edit, you'll just be able to highlight all of this and just empty it all out and then paste, right? And again, I have it just typed over here once and only once. That way I can just like copy and paste this. So I just drop it in here and hit OK. Again, leave that header row on. And so over here, what it's doing is it's doing the subtraction. And what it's doing is it's doing the rule, whoever I typed in first, minus the city group. And it's got right here the subtraction. 0.38 is the difference between the two averages, right? You can also see right here, if you subtract 9,375 minus 9, they did a little bit of rounding. That's okay. So I'm going to make note of this, that the difference in sample means, and check this out, right? Oh, actually, I don't have it. I have it on the next part. But here's what you do need to do when you get here is after you put in your data is you need to bootstrap it. You need to do 1,000 bootstrap. So I'm going to do that here. Let's see, generate 1,000, and then you hit your two-tail. And so down at the bottom, it does it for you. It's got the negative 1.429 up to a higher of 2.165. And what I'm actually going to do right now is see if I can take a quick picture of this without taking a picture of my face. I'm just going to lower that a little bit and let's do a screenshot. And so this is what you're going to need to do once you've done your bootstrap is just come take a screenshot, however you've normally been taking pictures of your homework, and then come over here. And I'm updating it also because every time that I do this example, the randomization, changes it a little bit. So I'm just going to bring in the picture that I just did. And so there it is, negative 1.429. I'm going to update that, negative 1.429. And then the upper is 2.165. 2.165. And the big thing that you want to do before you finish this section is make a comment. Because 0 is contained in the interval, then it's possible that there's not a difference in the average amount of sleep. So although the observed sample suggests that rule was having a higher average, over here it's suggesting that it may have just, may have been a fluke. Okay, so 0 is plausible, so there might not be a difference in the average sleep. And then just do a snippet of your picture. And then the last part is your hypothesis test. I'm just going to drop this down a little bit. It says, now you can decide if you want to do a left tail, two tail, or right tail. I think it's going to be probably simpler if we just do a right tail. But again, talk to me if you run into questions. But I decided because the observed sample suggested that the rule group had a higher average, that's my HA. Is the average for the rule higher than the average for the country, for the city people? Or is it that there's really no difference? And so the observed difference in average sample, again, this is where I mentioned that this is already the subtraction that StatKey has done. But the last part is after you've done the confidence interval, move over here to randomization, hypothesis test for difference in means, edit your data. And again, if you have already copy and pasted it, you can just paste it right in here and hit OK. And there is the difference, 0.38, same thing as the last graph. You'll do the same thing. You'll generate 1,000. And it's up to you, left tail, two tail, right tail, but just say which one you're doing. Again, I'm doing a right tail. I'm doing greater than. And do not assume that 0.25 is your p-value. You need to always just manually come down here, even if the statistic is already there, and you got to put in what was the difference between the subtraction. So 0.38, because I've seen some where it already does put it down there, but it doesn't update the p-value. So 0.38, hit OK, and then the p-value updates. So after putting that in, there's the p-value, 0.339. And if you do decide to do a two-tail, then you would need to multiply by 2. But since I'm doing just a right tail, let me go ahead and save a picture of this. And you'll do the same thing so that you can add it to your project. I just saved a picture. And because I've done this once before, my p-value, let me go ahead and get this new picture in here. So this is my old picture. Change picture. Let me bring this guy in here. This is the one that I just did. And so one thing that's important that I have down here is you got to make sure that you put your statistic down at the bottom, or the observed. Maybe I'll put that in here. The original, how do they have it there? The original sample, or the original sample statistic. You need to make sure you put it down here so that way the p-value updates. So it's 0.339, 0.339, and then using 5% level of significance. The p-value is not significant, so we do not reject the null hypothesis. There's not enough evidence that the average sleep for rural dwellers is higher than the average sleep for the city dwellers. So you want to put your p-value. What was your statistic? Are you doing left tail, right tail, two tail? Reject, do not reject, and then your conclusion and context. And make sure to include your graph down here. So you should have 1, 2, 3 graphs, and that is it. All right. So again, I hope this helps, but I'm going to go ahead and end the recording there, and let me know questions if questions arise.